All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. So it looks like we just have one question posted. So go ahead and get your questions posted on there if you want to get them answered. So Bob L asks, short game is killing me. Even when I try to keep my wrist stable, I have a tendency to throw my hands at the ball, resulting in chunks and skulls. Any advice? So typically when I see chunks and skulls and things like that when we're chipping, it's typically due to ball position and kind of weight distribution. So let's talk about that a little bit. So Bob, if you take a look here, what I'll do is I'll grab a wedge and show you how I like to set up for a chip shot. So one, typically when I see people that are chopping down into the golf ball, they're getting the chunks and the skulls. What's happening is they may have the ball too far back in their stance. Let me actually angle this down a little bit more so you can see a little bit better. There we go. So they're playing the ball probably off their back foot here. And if you do that, you're going to create kind of a downward chopping angle of attack so that basically your only way to make solid contact with the golf ball is if you just time that ground and the golf ball perfectly. And we're not always going to make that perfect. So what I would recommend doing is make sure you're playing that ball about in the middle of your stance. So if I grab a ball here, so if I have this ball in this area, kind of off my back foot, which I see all the time, I get people, the Unlimited Swing Reviews send me chipping videos, and they mention the same thing that you're saying. They're having trouble chunking, topping, and blading their chip shots, and they send me a video and the ball's back here. Well, if I do that, if I hit behind the ball just an inch, I'm gonna chunk it. If I hit in front of the ball an inch, I'm gonna skull it, right? So what I need to do is get that ball a little bit more forward in my stance, about in the middle here of my stance, and that's going to allow me to come in and brush the turf. If I hit an inch behind it, it's still going to be pretty good. If I hit an inch in front of it, it's still going to be pretty good. So that's going to help me to come in nice and shallow instead of really steep, nice and shallow, and be able to kind of sweep the turf and get a good shot there. So that's what I'd recommend doing. And I would do that I practice sweeping the turf before the shot and then trust the loft of the club. That's the other thing that I see. People, when they're chipping and they're struggling with chunking and sculling, they're trying to help the club up in the air. So they're getting in here and they go like this. And the wrist, you're saying you're trying to, but you may not actually be doing that. I would look on video to see if you're saying that you're trying to keep the wrist stable, but that doesn't mean that's actually what you're doing. Look on video. You may feel like you're doing this. You're coming in, the wrists are stable. That may be the feeling that's going on, but feel isn't always real, right? So we need to check and see on video, am I actually keeping my hands in front of the club head as I'm coming through, or am I actually trying to help the ball or get a little bit more extra power in my chip from flipping through? And if I do that, what's going to happen is this is going to release the club early, and I may hit behind the ball, or if I miss the ground, the club's going to come up, and I'm going to blade it. So that's the other thing. You need to make sure on video that you're keeping this wrist nice and flat, that lead wrist nice and flat, keeping this trail wrist kind of in a more bent back position as you're going through. Feel like you're opening your body as you're coming through so that club can release out here. If you try to keep your hips completely stable and just rock your shoulders like that, a lot of times what ends up happening is you will flip because the arms are going to want because your arms are out racing your body. That lead elbow here, my left elbow here, wants to fold up, and when it folds up, see what happens? I want to do that. So keep everything moving through as I'm chipping. And that's going to allow me to keep my hands in front. So that would be number 2. Number 3 is our weight distribution. This is, a chipping is more about precision, trying to get that exact distance. So if we have our weight on our back foot and we're doing a weight shift thing, we don't really need to do that. This isn't a power shot. For a powerful shot, like a pitcher, we need to wind up and throw it. Just like for a powerful shot in golf, if we're trying to get some good power and a full swing shot, we need to load up and then get to our lead side. This is a chip shot. We don't need that. So keep that weight forward so that that club bottoms out at the same point every single time. You're just coming through and you're bottoming out, same place every single time. And that's going to help you to get rid of that. So again, number one, ball placement. Put that right in the middle. Number two, trust the loft of the club. Check on camera. Make sure that your hands are staying in front of the golf ball as you're coming through. Make sure you keep the body moving through so that you can get this club to release out front. If you keep the body still, you may flip because of that, because the arms are racing out in front of the body. And then number three is keep that weight on the lead side. There's no reason to have your weight back here. Keep it on that lead side. There's going to be a little bit of a shift just from the club going back this way, but try to keep as much weight on that lead side as you can, and that's going to help you with your chipping quite a bit. Just go out and practice that. Practice brushing the turf with those things, and that's going to help you with your chips immensely. All right. Here we go. Okay, so John A says, I'm trying to achieve the straight arm release position post-impact. However, I find that my arms don't retain the width. I can't figure out what I am doing other than moving laterally. Any thoughts? So most likely what's going on, it's hard to say without seeing your swing, John, but most likely what's going on is that your arms are outracing. It's just kind of like what I talked about with the chip. Your arms are outracing your body. So what has to happen is that the arms kind of have to, that lead arm has to collapse in. So if I really exaggerate this and I come in and I don't rotate my body at all, I just come in, I stall my body. And so my body's just dead square right now to the ball. And I keep my arms going. Look what happens. I can't really fully, go like this. My arms are going out in front of my body. So what you need to do is continue to rotate. Feel like the chest is really opening up. The tour players, their chest is actually open at contact. When they're coming into contact, their chest is actually pointing out here. The reason why it looks like it's square is because the shoulders are relatively square. They're slightly open typically, but they're relatively square. And the reason why it looks like that is because our lead shoulder is protracted forward. So what that means is the lead shoulder, the shoulder blade is moving away from the spine. So if you look here, if I come into contact, if I have my shoulders in a neutral position, I'm actually like this, right? But if I protract my shoulder forward, now it looks like my shoulders are in a square position. But in reality, my chest is pointed out here. What I see with people that struggle with that extension through impact, getting those arms to extend out in front, it's because when they come into contact, they're like this. Their chest is actually maybe even closed off to the ball or square to the ball, and their shoulders are like this, and they don't keep rotating through impact, and the arms slide out in front, or the arms, crunch up like that and don't extend out. You mentioned that you have a little bit of a sway, like a moving laterally kind of thing that's going on, and that could be what's locking up your hips. If you look on video and you see that you are bumped out like this, when you're bumped out like this, man, it's really, really hard to rotate. The hips kind of lock in. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that as soon as we're getting that pressure in our lead foot, that we're pushing down and out into the ground. That's pushing our hip back so that now I can rotate my hips. That's going to help me rotate my chest, and that's going to allow me to keep the arms and hands in front instead of the arms racing out in front of my body, but keeping it so to where I can extend out in front. So now you can see my hips are pointed out this way. My chest is pointing out this way. Everything is releasing out to that point. So there's actually a great video in the straight line release course. I believe it's one of the first videos where you focus on getting each of those points to be releasing out there. It's not just the club that you want releasing out there. It's your entire body that's releasing out in there. So I believe it is from the straight line release course. I believe it's in level 1 even, but basically what you do is you take a ball. So if I have a ball right here, and I'll angle this camera down so you can see what I'm talking about. So in that straight line release course, All right. So in that straight line release course, you'll be set up to a golf ball, about right here. And then you'll have another one that's about 4 feet out in front, 4 or 5 feet out in front. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be focusing on first, you're going to be focusing on the hands or maybe the hips releasing to that point. So you're coming in and it's just about focusing on your hips getting to that point. And then you're coming in, you're focusing on your chest and your shoulders releasing to that point. Then you're focusing on your hands releasing to that point. And then you're focusing on the club head releasing to that point. That's where everything is releasing. It's to that point about 4 or 5 feet out in front of impact. So I'd recommend checking out that drill from the straight line release course and working on that. But also you may, if you're pushing out and you're sliding and your hip is bumped out, you may want to work on what's called the compression line, which is the course that's before the straight line release course. The compression line is a line that we draw from our lead shoulder to our ankle, and we want our hip to be in a straight line with that. If we're bumped out, if I'm like this, if I draw a line from my shoulder to my ankle, you're going to see the middle of my ankle. You can't see my ankle, but you'll see that my hip is well bumped out from that. I want to have my hip in line with that, and then also rotated open. So that would be what a good compression line looks like right here. And if I'm in this position, that's going to make it a lot easier for me to get everything to be releasing out front and getting that full extension. So yeah, if you're seeing this, that's most likely, and I don't know if that's exactly what's going on in your swing, but that's typically what I see when people struggle with that extension in the downswing. It's because the body is not continuing to rotate. So feel that in your lead leg, rotating the hip, backing up, and that's going to be worked on in the compression line. So to get to the compression line course, click the house icon at the top of the page, scroll down, and you'll see the compression line course in the list of Top Speed Golf System Progress courses. You'll also see the straight line release course, but I'd be working on those drills to get you in the right positions there. All right, so Al N says, I tried all the drills, but still cannot take a divot with my iron. So I would be looking on video to make sure that you're actually doing what you're trying to do. Just doing a drill doesn't mean that it's automatically going to happen. You have to actually check on video to see what's going on. So basically what's going on when you're not taking a divot, that is because you're most likely coming in too shallow into the golf ball. So the club's coming in too level or even up on the golf ball. And that comes from an early release. If I'm coming in and I get some good lag and I'm getting this club to release out in front, then that means I'm hitting down and through the ball. If I'm casting the club, or even if I'm getting some lag, but releasing that lag as I'm coming in, and I don't have any forward shaft lean here as I'm coming into contact, that club comes in very, very level with the turf and kind of a scoopy kind of motion. And that's where that no divot is going to come in. So it's hard to say exactly, what all things may be going on in your swing to be making that happen. But I'd be looking at the straight line release course. That's going to help you to release that club out in front and get that down and through contact. And it's just going to take diligent, it's not something that's going to change overnight. Getting that release is one of the toughest things, if not the toughest thing in the Top Speed Golf system. I actually think it is the toughest thing. That's why it's the last piece, because it is the toughest thing. So working on those, actually going through the reps, all the reps. You may do the drills, but you have to do the reps, check it on video, make sure that you're actually do the test. If you go and do the test, level 1, level 2, level 3, and you do all the reps that we're talking about, and you check it on video and make sure that you're actually, you're passing the test as you go through it, then you'll start getting that club to release out in front, and that's going to allow you to get that divot. So it's not something that's easy. It's going to be out of your comfort zone. It doesn't work the way that you just do, a few drills, or even if you just do all the drills. If you do all the drills, but then don't actually put in the repetition to make it second nature and check video to make sure all that's happening, then it's not really going to hold. You may do it a little bit while you're out there, but in order for it to become second nature, it takes a lot of time and repetition. I always equate it to learning how to type. If you've been on the office hours, you may have heard me talk about this analogy before. But when you're trying to change or train the way that you do something, it's very similar to learning how to type, especially if it's something that's completely out of your comfort zone, because it's happening so fast that you don't really have time to think and make it happen. You have to make it second nature. And that's how typing is. So when you first started learning how to type, there's a keyboard. The letters seem completely random on the keyboard, right? There's no like particular order to what they're in. So you're looking at it and you're pointing and pecking and things like that, and you're really slow. But eventually you started to kind of memorize where all the letters were, and you started getting faster and faster and faster. And then you learned how to put the fingers on the keyboard correctly. And then you learn that every finger has an individual job to get each letter, and you started getting faster and faster with that. And then you got to where you didn't have to look at the keyboard. You could actually look up and type words. And then you got to where you were typing in, instead of thinking in individual letters, you were actually thinking in words. And then you got to where you were actually thinking in sentences. So if you actually think about it, when you typed this sentence, I tried all the drills, but still cannot take a divot with my irons, you probably don't remember typing the O in divot. You probably don't remember that. You probably don't remember typing the U in butt. And that's because it's second nature. You don't even have to think about it. I'm assuming that, you're a reasonably good typer. Or maybe you're still in that area where you're pointing and pecking. But basically what that means is you took the time to make that second nature. So think about all the time it took you to get from pointing and pecking, looking at the keyboard, to the way that somebody would be typing at 70 words a minute. There was a lot of mistakes that happened in between, but that's, you had a feedback mechanism, because you knew that, if you were trying to type a T and you typed an R, that was the feedback mechanism that you did it wrong. And then you backspace, then you correct it. So that's what you got to be doing when you're trying to change things in your swing. You have to be looking on video to see if you're actually doing what you think you're doing. That's one of the keys here. I know it's a pain in the neck, the video you're swinging. I wish I didn't have to. I wish you didn't have to do it, because it is a pain in the neck to do. It's a pain in the neck to set it up and to look at the video after every single time, or to spot check it after a few reps. But it's what you have to do you have to have a feedback mechanism. If you don't have a feedback mechanism, such as video or a coach there looking at what's going on and telling you, or maybe you're using some sort of a training aid or device that gives you a feedback mechanism. Like if you're working on swing speed, you have a swing speed radar that tells you, hey, you just swung 100 miles per hour. If you don't have some sort of feedback mechanism, then it's really hard to know if you are making any actual change. So keep that in mind whenever you're working through things. You just actually have to diligently go through it and do the repetition. Otherwise, you may not get very much out of it. I really wish it worked in a way that I could just tell you what you need to do, and then you could just go do it, and then you do it forever. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. It's just like if you've never typed before, and I handed you this typewriter, and I said, type me an essay, and you got 5 minutes to do it. Type me a one-page essay, you got 5 minutes. There's no way you'd be able to do that, right? So that's basically, you have to actually train yourself to be able to get into that position. All right, so Daniel W. says, hi, Q. Do you advise using the same swing mechanics for all the different clubs, or do the swing mechanics change for the different clubs? For the most part, the swing mechanics are going to stay mostly the same. So as far as the Top Speed Golf system is concerned, it's going to stay mostly the same. Now, with a driver, there's basically, if you look at it, there's essentially three swings for the most part. There's your driver swing, and you don't have to use different swings, but there's your driver swing, which for me, for my driver swing, I'm a little bit more aggressive with my driver swing. I swing a little bit longer with my driver swing so I can generate a little bit more speed. The difference between your driver swing and your iron swing is that with a driver swing, I'm trying to get as much distance as I possibly can, right? I'm trying to hit the ball as far as possible. If I hit it 20 yards further than what I did on the last hole with my driver, then that's great. That's even better. So there's no limit, right? Now, I mean, obviously there is a limit, but there's no realistic limit. You know, if I'm playing a 400-yard hole, I can have at it. I'm not going to hit my driver past the hole, right? So, maybe if it's a 300-yard hole or something like that, I may want to think about maybe not going after it as much and just taking a nice easy driver. But for the most part, I'm going after it with my driver a little bit. So a little bit more aggressive swing. Might get the heel coming off the ground a little bit. I might be a little bit more angled away because I'm wider with my stance. I might be a little bit more angled away with my spine. I might be a little bit more angled away with my compression line as I'm coming in. That's going to allow me to swing more up on the golf ball and get a higher launch and lower spinning shot. So that's basically my difference between my iron shot with than a driver. Now with the iron shot, we're trying to hit a specific distance. We're not only trying to hit it dead straight or hit it on target. We're also trying to hit it to the distance of that target. So I don't want to take as aggressive of a swing, because if I hit it 20 yards further than I did on the last hole, if I hit my 8-iron 20 yards further than I did on the 8-iron on the last hole, and I'm trying to hit a specific distance, that's not going to end well. I'm going to hit it way over the green typically. So you want to have more of a controlled type of swing, a repeatable kind of full swing that's going to give you the numbers that you're looking for. So that's what I would be looking at with. So I don't take as aggressive of a swing, as long of a swing with my irons, my full swing with my irons and my wedges and things like that. So that's pretty much it. And then, like I said, my compression line might be a little bit more vertical because I'm hitting the ball off the turf, so it's coming off the ground. My spine angles might be a slightly more vertical as I'm coming in, still within the realm of what we're looking for. So if you're looking at, for a driver, I might be 25 degrees angled away, but for an iron, I might be 20 degrees angled away. It's still within that realm there as we're coming in. So, and then the last one would be kind of like what I would call finesse wedge shots, where so with a full swing iron shot, you want that happy medium between, you want to get good distance. I don't want to swing so slow and under control that I don't get good distance. So I want to have a consistent amount of distance, but I still want to have that good distance and direction. But with a finesse wedge shot, it's not really about distance that much. It's more about the control of the distance. It's very, very important, really, really being able to control that. So typically, if it's a finesse kind of wedge shot, more like a pitch shot, I might kind of keep my weight forward a little bit to try and stay a little bit more consistent. I might be a little bit more vertical so I can hit down on the ball a little bit more. I might try to get a little bit more forward shaft lean as I'm coming in to keep that ball nice and low and get some good spin on it. So that's basically what it comes down to. But for the most part, the actual mechanics of the swing are going to be the same for club to club. It's just, because I swing a little bit more aggressively, I might have a little bit more shoulder turn with my driver and things of that nature. So Gregory S. says, as someone who intentionally shallows the club in transition, would standing closer to the ball at address help create a less inside-out downswing that is more on plane? It's possible that it could. It's something to try for sure, just something to experiment with. Sometimes standing closer to the ball, people will react by coming over the top. So it really just depends, but on the player and what's going on. But definitely something to try to see what's going on. So if I'm standing really, really close to the golf ball, if I'm normally like this and I stand kind of like this, I might come down and go like this, or I may bend down more to get to the golf ball and get forward shaft lean. It really just depends on the player and how not everyone's going to react the same to standing closer to the golf ball, but it's definitely something to experiment with to see what works better for you. Typically, as far as how far to stand away from the ball, the easiest way I think to think about it is really just to get a little bit of flex in your knees, bend over at the waist a little bit, let your arms basically hang straight down about 4 or 5 inches in front, and then the club's down, and that's about a pretty good posture right there. If you're like this, you're typically going to kind of stand up in the backswing, and if you're too upright, it's going to be hard to kind of get down to the golf ball. So typically that's a good place to be. A little bend in the knees, bend over at the waist, arms hanging about 4 or 5 inches, 4 to 6 inches in front of the thighs, and that's going to be a good place to be. Now with the driver, it's going to be a little bit less because the club is so much longer, you are going to be standing a little bit more upright. So there's going to be a little bend in the knees, a little bit more upright, and a little bit more reach with the hands, and that's basically good driver posture right there. So that's just because the club is so much longer. So if you can experiment with that, but yeah, that's pretty much a good place to start. So Earl C says, what is proper weight distribution between your feet on iron? So at address, I'd say pretty balanced. It's going to be mostly 50-50. They actually measured tour players as far as now I'm going to change your wording to pressure distribution because weight is actually, we're talking about your mass for the most part. Pressure, we're talking about what you're putting into the ground. That's really what you're feeling in your feet. When people say weight distribution, they're really talking about pressure distribution. That's what you're feeling in your feet. So at address, you're going to see a tour player is actually going to be, they measured them, and the average was 55% on the lead foot, 45% on the trail foot. And the reason why is because subconsciously they'll have a little bit of weight, a little bit more pressure in that lead foot because that helps them to get momentum going to the trail side. Now, I just tell people, be balanced. That's pretty much balanced. 45-55 is pretty much balanced. So I would just work on staying nice and balanced at address. You're not leaning one way or the other. Nice and balanced at address. Now, as you go up to the top, they measured these tour players. I believe it was over 200 tour players that they measured on this mat. Basically, it's Swing Catalyst is what their study or the research that I'm referring to. And what the Swing Catalyst is I don't know if you've seen these, but it's a pressure mat. It's got all these sensors in it, and it measures the pressure that you're putting into it with your feet. So you stand on it during the swing, and it measures the pressure that you're putting into it with your feet. So, like I said, at address, they measured the pressure, and they measured these key checkpoints. So at address, at the top of the swing, at impact, in the full follow through, and we'll talk about all of those. So at address, it was about 55-45. So lead foot 55, trail foot 45. But like I said, just feel balanced. You don't need to really focus on, okay, I need to have a little bit more pressure in my lead foot. That's getting a little bit too, you don't need to do that. Just be nice and balanced. That's going to be a good place to be. Intuitively, you'll actually probably put a little bit of pressure in your lead foot as you are shifting momentum into your trail side. And that's most likely what they measured when they were doing the test. So be nice and balanced at address. At the top of the swing, what they found is that they were between 75 and 80% pressure in the trail foot. So as they were loading up and getting up to the top of the swing, 75-80% of the pressure, the total pressure, was in the trail foot. And then as they come down into contact, that reversed. So now as I'm coming into contact, 75, as we're shifting our weight forward and we're getting that pressure now going into that lead foot. At contact, they found 75-80% was the most players were in that range when they were at contact. And then in the full finish, as they came all the way around, it was about 90-95% of the total pressure they put in ground was in that lead foot. So they were really coming around and posting up, getting under the lead side. Basically, the pressure that was coming from the trail foot was basically just the weight of your leg for the most part. That's all that's putting into the ground. There's no more, you're not actually putting any force into the ground. It's just the weight of your leg that's putting pressure in the ground. This is something that I think a lot of amateur players struggle with. Is at contact is that point. Most amateur players, I believe, are probably getting in a good position at the top where it's 75-80% pressure. Now, I don't have one of these mats. I'm just basing this on what I see with students all the time. Most students don't have the issue with loading. Now, some do, some students I see they're keeping the weight on the lead side, or they're getting too much weight on their trail side. But I think for the most part that the backswing with the trail foot, we're seeing that to be in that reasonable range, pretty close to what we're seeing with the tour players. The issue comes in where most amateur players can't get that proper weight shift to the lead side. They're usually 50-50 at impact, or even more weight on the backside of impact, or they're 60-40, or they're just not quite getting to that 80%, the 75-80% number. Very, very rarely. And then very, very rarely do you see someone where they're actually, it's 90-95% pressure in that lead foot. Typically, you're going to be the falling back. There's going to be a lot of weight or a lot of pressure in that trail foot. So the best way to kind of work on this, if you're seeing on your swing, it's hard to see on camera pressure distribution. You really have to have a map to really know, but you can have a good general idea and guess, okay, how much pressure. You can pause the swing and look on video and think about, okay, how much pressure. I've looked at my swing to this point, and afterwards, if you're coming into contact and you're seeing your body is not opening up and you're kind of standing and backing away from the ball, you're probably about 50-50 or 60-40 in your lead foot. That's probably about where you're at. If you're seeing that your body is rotating and you're pushing into the ground and rotating your body, and you're getting into a position like this at impact, you're probably in that 75-80% range like a tour player. But most amateur players are not getting it into that kind of position. So if you're not in that kind of position at contact, then you're almost guaranteed to not get in that position in the full finish. So that's basically how it goes. But I wouldn't go out there. If you're trying to work on getting that right weight shift and getting to your lead side and loading up properly, this may seem a little bit off, but I would actually recommend working through the Stop Chunking and Topping course. And odds are, if you are struggling with your weight shift and loading up properly, you're struggling with topping and chunking. But what that course is going to do is it's going to help you. That course is all about teaching you to load up and get to your lead side properly. That's the main issue when it comes to chunking and topping. So I would recommend working on that course and getting into the right positions with that. If you're looking for that, there's the step drill is in there. So that's starting with your feet together, starting the swing and stepping forward. It gets you to where you're loading up properly in the beginning using the dot drill. So I would check out that course. To get to that course is very easy. Click the house icon at the top of the page, scroll down on the page, and you'll see a list of all the courses on the website. And you'll see the Stop Chunking and Topping course. Get started on that course and start hitting the ball a little bit better. All right, so we got Daniel W says, is there a good rule of thumb for how high to tee the golf ball for the driver shot? So typically I like to see about 3/4 of the ball above the crown of the club. All right, so if we're teeing this up, if you tee it up to where it's only about that high, you have to kind of hit down on it with the driver, and that's going to be difficult to do, or swing very, very level with it. So ideally what you want is about 3/4 of the golf ball above the crown of the club. So that's going to put it right there. That's going to allow this club to bottom out and then work up into the golf ball and get that center face contact. That's going to allow you to get high launch and low spin. And if ball position is really, really important for this. So you got to make sure that your ball position is forward in your stance. If you have the ball back in your stance, too far back in your stance, and the club's reaching its low point, and you've got this ball teed up to where it's 3/4 is above the crown of the club, you're going to be hitting it off the top of the club. So you need to make sure that your ball position is probably straight. Typically, your club is bottoming out about where your armpit is. It's not exact, but typically that's where the club head is bottoming out as it's coming through. So if you are looking on video, if you're looking at from face on and you're looking on video and you're seeing that your club is straight down from your armpit, the ball is straight down from your armpit, it's basically bottoming out where your armpit is. So what I'd recommend doing is teeing it up on the outside of your shoulder here. So if you're at address, if you look, the outside of your shoulder, that's going to allow you the club. It's going to give the club, if you think about how much space is between your armpit and the outside of your shoulder, 4 or 5 inches or so, that gives that club 4 or 5 inches to bottom out and then work up into the club. Now, it's not exact. Your shoulder's not going to be in the same spot, at impact than it is at address. But it's a good kind of rule of thumb to go by. And you can always move it a ball forward, a ball back to get it exactly where you need to go. But that's what I recommend doing. Tee it up to where about 3/4 of the ball is above it, above the crown of the club here. And then tee as far as ball position goes, get that to where it's teed up outside your shoulder. I know you probably heard inside of your foot before, but I don't like that because if you have a very narrow stance, look where the outside of my shoulder is. It's going to be out here. But if you play it on the inside of your foot, that's going to be about where my Nike swoosh is here. And that's not going to be it. If I'm really, really wide, if I'm like Brooks Koepka and I have a very, very wide stance with my driver, if I play it on the inside of my foot, it's way outside my shoulder. And the club may bottom out and then work too much up into the golf ball. So the club may bottom out and then work too much into the golf ball, and I may top it or hit it on the very bottom of the face, which we don't want to do either. So typically a good rule of thumb is going to be off the outside of the shoulder here is going to be a good spot to always tee up the ball. And you can, your stance with your driver is not typically going to change. That inside of the lead foot might be a good position. It might actually be where that lead shoulder is. So once you understand where that lead shoulder is, you can get a general idea of where that is in relationship to your lead foot. At that point, you can tee it up in relationship to your lead foot because it is a little bit easier to do that. You just have to find whatever that relationship is. Maybe it's 3 inches inside of the lead foot, based on how maybe it's more if you have more of a narrow stance, it's more kind of the outside of your lead foot. So you just have to find whatever that reference point is and then use kind of the same stance every single time as far as width goes. All right. So Jeff C says, I have a difficult time keeping my balance on my follow through. My practice swings are usually balanced, but I continue to fall backwards after striking the ball. Any suggestion? So basically what you're trying to do in your practice swings, you're most likely coming in and the club face is wide open. You can video your practice swings to see this. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell because the club head's moving fast. But what you can do is you can look at your swing on video and take reference to your lead hand. So you can see here in my lead hand, you can see, a couple knuckles here, definitely the first knuckle. Well, if I'm coming into contact and you see a lot more knuckles, you see like 4 knuckles, you know that my face is open, right? So that's most likely when you are falling backwards. That's usually from coming over the top. Now, I haven't seen your swing, so I don't know what exactly is going on. But typically, when people are falling backwards, it's from coming over the top because they're afraid they're not. You're compensating because you're trying to get this club face square at contact. And the only way that you know how to do it is to kind of come over the top and fall back. I'm exaggerating, but come over the top and fall back to square up the face, and now you're off balance. So you need to learn to make that practice swing, but also get that club face squaring, and that comes from turning that handle in the downswing. So I'd probably be working on the move because that's going to get you to where you're shallowing out the club, which is the opposite of coming over the top. Coming over the top is like this. When you come over the top, you're most likely going to fall back to get the club to the ball, because when you come over the top, that low point gets moved forward in your swing. So when you come over the top, you might fall back to get that low point moving back again, getting it to where the golf ball is so that you can square up the face and hit a decent shot. So that's most likely what's going on in your swing. You'll want to check on video to see what's going on there. Now, to alleviate that, what I do is I get the club shallowing out so that now the club can work from the inside. But you need to get the club face squaring the right way now, because you're used to coming in and squaring the face by going like this with your wrists, by really turning over the wrist. I'm really exaggerating, but really getting it working that way. And that's not what you can do. If you do that from shallowing position, you're going to have that face slammed shut, and you're going to flip through impact. So what we need to do is get this club shallowing out and get the club face squaring by turning the handle this way. That's doing that. So that's that lead wrist, bowing, trail wrist, bending back. And that's going to allow you to rotate and stay in your posture through impact and stay in balance and get that club to release out in front. So I'd be working on the move course to get you into that position there. There's some great drills in the move course. We got the 10 strike it drill. We got the compress the heck out of the ball. I can't remember exactly what he calls that drill, but that's a great drill to get the handle turning down. We're coming down to first parallel in the downswing, and we're rotating this face down. You can see I really exaggerated it, and then I'm continuing to rotate through contact there, and that's going to help you get to where you're coming into contact with tons of forward shaft lean and tons of compression on the ball. So I'd recommend working on that course. To get to the move course, all you got to do is click the house icon. That's going to take you to the home page. On the home page, you'll find a list of all the courses. Click on the move and get started there, and you'll start swinging more in balance for sure. All right, so William S. says, there seems to be two schools of thought. One is that arms react to body rotation. The other being that body reacts to the swing, to swinging the arms. What is your opinion? Well, the golf swing is from the ground up. So the arms are reacting to the body position. Really what you're doing is you're reacting to what you want to have happen to the golf ball, right? So you're trying to hit the ball square. You're trying to hit the ball in the center of the face. You're trying to swing on plane. You're trying to make ball first contact. So you're doing everything in your power to make that happen, right? And feel isn't always real, right? So you may feel like you're swinging on plane, but the reality is that you're coming over the top. You may feel like you're hitting it in the center of the face, but the reality is you're hitting in the heel. You may feel like you're squaring up the face, but you're leaving the face way open and blocking it way out to the right. So there's all kinds of things that can be going on there. But what you're doing is you're reacting to the position of the club to get it. So let's say I'm coming down steep, right? If I end up in this position, the downswing, well, now I'm going to react to this position to compensate to get this club to be on plane, and so I can square it up. So what will I normally do? I'll stand up, and I'll get this club working more underneath and on plane, and now I can swing on plane. Whereas if I were to continue, if I just continue with this and didn't make any compensation, I'm either going to come over the top or I'm just going to stick this club in the ground behind the golf ball. And intuitively, you're not going to do that because you're reacting to trying to hit a good shot. So I would say that your arms are reacting to your body. If you're someone who's having your body react to your arms, then you're swinging the wrong way. Well, you're not swinging in the most efficient way because you're not leading with your lower body. That means that you're just swinging all arms. Now you can play good golf just swinging your arms in front of your body, but it's just very hard to be consistent and it's hard to have very much power. You're not going to be very efficient. The most efficient way, and what you see every single tour player do, is you see that they start that downswing with the lower body. It's happening from the ground up. So they're getting that weight shift to the lead side. They're getting that pressure going into the ground, their lead foot. That reaction is going into the hips. That's the hips, the feet, the lead foot is pushing and rotating the hips. The hips rotating is getting my torso to start rotating. My torso rotating is getting my shoulders to start rotating. My shoulders rotating is getting my arms to rotate. Getting my arms going. My arms are getting the hands and the club going. So that's basically the sequence in which it happens. It's not my arms are going and then, excuse me, I thought I had to sneeze. I did have to sneeze. Sorry about that. It's not my arms are going and then my body is just going with it. My body is going and the arms are going with it. And that's the way that you get lag and all those things. If you think the arms are going, you're going to be casting the club, releasing out in front. Now, you can play good golf doing that way, but it's going to be very difficult to be consistent because you're going to be most likely flipping. And it's going to be hard to have a lot of power because you're basically just swinging all arms. Now, most of your power does come from your arms and your shoulders, but we're talking like 80–85%. But it's not the most efficient way. If you want to generate momentum with your lower body, that's how you get lots of speed, and that's how you get consistent, because not only are you getting the speed from creating momentum with your lower body, but your swing mechanics are also allowing you to get forward shaft lean and release that club out in front, de-loft the club. It's allowing you to come into impact if you're hitting shots off the turf, make ball first contact. It's allowing you, when you have forward shaft lean, to get that strike higher on the face. If you release that club early, you swing all arms and you flip, you're pretty much all going to be hitting thin shots unless the ball is sitting up on the grass like it's on a tee all the time. So that's basically what's going on there. And then William S. goes on to say, an example, when you throw a ball, you don't think about rotating the body. You swing your arms and the hips get out of the way to give access to the target, i.e. the body is reacting to swinging the arms. That's actually, I don't agree with that. Actually, you are absolutely rotating your body, and it's not just the arms and then the body is reacting to that. If you think about a baseball pitcher, right? So if I'm a baseball pitcher, what am I doing with my body? I'm not going like this and then my body is coming with it. If you look at a baseball pitcher, if they're the most efficient way and fastest way to throw a ball is you're at the rubber here. I'm taking a step back. I'm winding up my body. I haven't done anything with my arms yet. My arms haven't done anything yet. I'm winding up my body and I'm rotating here. And now once I'm getting to where I'm rotating, just like in the golf swing, I'm leading with my lower body and I'm getting my momentum shooting forward. Then the arms coming in, and it helps me develop momentum. If a baseball pitcher did this, threw the ball, and then the body came with it, they wouldn't throw it very hard. So that's actually not what's going on there mechanically, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. But it's always the most powerful movements start with a loading up with the lower body and a momentum shift with the lower body with the trailing upper body. You think about a basketball player going up for a dunk, right? They're bracing and they're going down, they're loading up, and then they explode up. And it's not really, they don't get the upper body going up until after they've really started to explode up. And that's going to allow them to get up. If you think about, a quarterback throwing a Hail Mary, right? He's getting the momentum forward, and then a lot of times they'll take a couple steps. They won't just go like that. They'll actually take a couple steps to get a little bit more momentum going with their lower body loading up and fire that. So it's all happening mechanically from the lower body up through the arms. All right, so Ernie B says, in my backswing, I sway away from the target. I think this is making my low point vary between shots, which causes inconsistent ball contact. What drill would you recommend me to stop swaying? So I would recommend working. There's a great drill in the stable fluid spine course because that's really what's going on there. When you sway in the backswing, typically what's going on is your hips are kind of moving this way, and look what's happening to my spine angle, right? So my spine angle is going this way. And if you remember right from the top speed golf system, we want to have our spine angle nice and angled away. And then as we go up to the top, we want that to remain nice and stable. So if you look at pretty much any tour player, if you draw a line, or any good player really, if you draw a line on the outside of their ankle, outside of their hip, you'll see that they never really cross into that throughout the swing. They're never going to cross into that. They're going to be moving. If anything, they might even move off of it a little bit as they go up to the top, as they reach the top of the swing. But typically what you're going to see is they're not going to be moving into that. They're pushing their hip back and out of the way, and they're maintaining their spine angle as they go up to the top. So what you're talking about is kind of like a reverse spine angle, reverse pivot, some people might call it. And that's where we're getting our spine angle leaning toward the target. We're swaying our hips that way. So when that happens, what your weight distribution, or the pressure that's going in your feet, that's getting on the outside of your foot. So you need to feel that pressure on the inside of your foot as you're going back. Feel that pressure. If it's getting on the outside, that means that your hip's getting on the outside of your foot, right? So feel it on the inside of your foot. That's going to make you want to be pushing into the ground and feel like the ground is pushing back into you in that direction. So if I'm swinging back, the ground is pushing back at me in this direction. If it's pushing straight up or even in this direction, because I'm getting on the outside of my foot, if it's pushing out in that means I'm swaying my hips. So I really need to focus on this first move going back. I'm going back. I'm feeling that pressure on the inside of my foot. And you can see I'm not swaying my hips. If I get on the outside, now that's an issue. I'm getting my hips sway. So we need to feel like that's going to the inside of the foot as we're going up the top. And that's going to allow you to get in that better spine angle. In order for that to happen, if our hips are swaying, then they're not rotating. So it's going to feel like your hip is rotating back. It's almost like if somebody took a rope and they attached it to my belt loop here and they wrapped it around my backside here, and there's someone who is holding that rope right here. And as I started my backswing, they were pulling on that rope, really pushing my hip back this way and helping me to rotate. One thing that you may want to look at is your feet alignment. If you have internal rotation issues in your hip, which I actually do myself, if you keep your feet square like this, a lot of times you will sway because you can't really rotate. So your body doesn't know what to do. So we need to rotate. If you watch here, if I take my foot here and I angle it out like that, now I can more easily rotate and push my hip back. It puts my leg at a good angle to where I can push my hip back and rotate the hips back. So I would take a look at those games. So let me summarize that all for you. So number one, what I'd recommend doing is go to the Stable Fluid Spine course. In level 3, there is a reverse pivot drill that kind of goes over a lot of what I talked about there. So remember, we want to keep our spine angle nice and angled away. So work through that drill. Easiest way to get to the Stable Fluid Spine course is just to click the house icon at the top of the page. That's going to take you to the home page. On the home page, if you click the Stable Fluid Spine course, if you scroll down, you'll see that. Click that Stable Fluid Spine course and go to level 3 in there and work through that drill. That's going to be a really great one. And also in that drill, what you want to be thinking about is, this is number 2, is that weight going to the inside of your foot. Really, if it gets on the outside of your foot at all, that means that you're swaying your hips. So make sure that's on the outside. Sorry, that's on the inside part of your foot. That's going to mean that you're going to be pushing it back. Number 3, I want you to imagine that there's someone with a rope that's attached to your belt loop here, and they're standing over here. That belt, that rope is wrapped around your backside here, and it's attached right here. And someone is standing there, and they're pulling it that way, and it's pushing your hip straight back. You're going to feel like you're pushing down into the ground, down and out away from you with the inside of your foot. Another good feeling is to imagine you have a clock, right? I'm standing on top of a clock here, and if this is dead noon on the clock, I'm going to feel like I'm pushing down and out away from me toward 1:30 on the clock. And that's with the inside of my foot. That's going to help me to push my hip back, almost as like there's someone standing here pulling on that rope. And again, if you are having trouble with this, like things are just feeling locked in with your hips, turn that trail foot out. Turn that trail foot out that way at address, and that's going to allow you to put your leg at a better angle to be able to push it back. If you keep your feet dead square like that, it might look better. It might be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, but it may be limiting you and making you have to sway your hips because they have nowhere to go. They're locked up. So angle that trail foot out and push the hip back and out of the way, and that's going to help you to rotate. Imagine there's a wall right here, and you can't rotate into that wall. Your hip can't touch that wall because it's getting pulled that way. So give that a try. That should help you to rotate better. And you may find that you even get a better hip turn from that, and do get a better shoulder turn and more power. That may be limiting your shoulder turn if you're swaying your hips, because a lot of the shoulder turn comes from how much you can turn your hips. So you may find that you even get some more power from that as well. All right. So Steve G says, when I make my first move on the backswing, I noticed that on video, I have a tendency to stand up about 4 inches. Is this bad? Is there a drill to stop this? Yes. Yeah, you typically don't want to be standing up. You will typically never see a good player, like a tour player, stand up at all further than address. So the first thing I would look at is make sure you're not too bent over the ball. If you are really bent over the ball like this, like, really too much bent over, then a lot of times you'll feel like you'll need to stand up in the backswing. So stand a little bit taller at address. Like I mentioned this earlier, and you may not have been around, but the best way to kind of know this is just to get a little bit of flex in the knees, bend over at the waist, hinge right at the waist, straight down like that. And then you let your arms kind of hang out in front of your body. And they should be, 4 to 6 inches in front of your thighs. That's going to be a good place to hold the club. That's going to be right there. If you are bent way over like this, you're way too far bent over. Just get a little bit of bend so that your arms basically start to hang 4 to 6 inches in front of your thighs. That's going to be a good spot. Don't keep going. Just once you get a little bit of bend in the knees and you bend down to where your arms are hanging about 4 to 6 inches, that's going to be a good spot. Now, that's with the irons. With a driver, because it's so much longer, and a little bit the 3-wood, it's so much longer than your normal club. If you look at here, I have a wedge. This it's over a foot longer than my wedge here. So because of that, we have to actually stand a little bit more upright. So again, a little bit of bend in the knees, a little bit more upright, and then actually reach for the club a little bit, and that's going to be a good driver posture. So if you're like this with your driver, you're really bent over, you're typically going to stand up in the backswing. So you want to stand tall to go low. That's basically what you want to be doing there. So that may be, if not, then what you also need to feel like, maybe you have great posture and you just like to stand up as you're going up. So what I want you to feel like is that you're actually crunching into your lead side as you're going back. Because that's what's happening. As I'm turning in my golf swing, in order to stay in my posture, in order to not raise up, I have to actually get some side bend. So you're going to feel like you're crunching into your side here as you're going back. So if you watch, if I don't have any side bend in my swing, I'm just going to kind of stand up and go like that. I have to actually crunch into my side as I'm turning my shoulders. So I want you to feel that as you're going. So one way that you can kind of feel this is if you just stand straight up like this. Now I want you to kind of bend your spine, almost like I'm trying to touch my knee with my fingertips. So going down, that's what side bend feels like. So you kind of feel like this crunching in your lead side there. So as I go up to the top, I'm going to feel that crunching in my lead side. And now you're going to look on camera and see, okay, now I see I'm not going out of my posture. So that's number one. Stand tall to go low. Do that drill. Get a little bit of knee flex. Bend over at the waist until your hands are about 4 to 6 inches in front of your thighs. That's going to be a good spot right there. For the driver, you'll be a little bit more upright and reach a little bit more for it. So that's going to be a good spot there. And that's with every single club in the bag, the first part there. You can do that with every club, wedge shot to a 3-iron hybrid. 3-wood, it's still a pretty long club in relationship to the other ones. 3-wood's typically about 2 inches shorter. You may need to reach just a little bit and be a little bit more upright for that, but make sure that you're not bending over the ball so much. And then number 2 is feel like you're really crunching. You're getting that side bend as you're going to the top. And it's going to be the same thing in the downswing. In your downswing, as you're rotating your body open, you're also going to have this side bend right here. If you're coming into contact and you have no side bend, you're going to be doing this action and flipping at the ball. So feel like you really have that side bend and that you're opening up as you're coming into contact. So work on those. That's going to help you stay in your posture a lot better and not stand up. That's going to make you more consistent. When you stand up out of the swing, the reason why it makes it difficult is it's just hard to recover from. It's hard to get back down to where you need to be. You can play good golf where you're at. It's just you're going to end up, usually what I see with people who kind of stand up in the backswing is in the downswing, they just kind of throw the arms at it. And I imagine that's what you see. You probably are seeing on video that you're bringing this club back and you're standing up, and then the downswing is this. It's just throwing the arms at it. It may not be, but that's typically what I see in the swing whenever I see people kind of standing up out of their posture. All right, so thanks everybody for joining me. It's at 10 a.m. right now, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. We'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time to answer more of your questions. Again, thanks everybody for joining me. And we'll be back here tomorrow. Everybody have a good rest of your day. Talk to you next time.